Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is. It is 1 o'clock Eastern on Monday. It is actually Halloween in 2022. And I can't think of anything that would be better to talk about than taking the mask off and actually speaking with influence. And I have the expert here, Stacey Hanke. Welcome to the show, Stacey.
Thanks, Meredith. I was a little concerned. I didn't think about this doing it on Halloween and what you were going to say about it, that this is a good fit today.
Yeah, isn't it? Because a lot of times when people communicate, they're not authentic. They're not as present as they need to be. So let's hit the video, let's start the show, and let's have a really good conversation.
All right, sounds
Again, welcome back to Thrive, Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage. It is right here on this show where you learn the strategies you need to take on any obstacle that is going to hit you. And I got to tell you, Stacey, I'm so excited to dive into this topic today because I think communication is one of, I do a lot of strategic planning for companies, and communication issues always come up. I feel like it is such a misunderstood word. But before we dive into that, for those few people watching us that may not know you, give us a little bit of background on you and how this became your path and your passion.
Yeah, it's kind of comical because I started out my career in radio. I always tease that I wanted to be, the next Today Show host, and apparently that did not work out because I'm sitting here with you right now. But what was so interesting about that whole process, I used to do voiceover work. And Meredith, I thought walking into that job, that would be the easiest thing to do. How tough is it really to read a script? And I remember listening to the first couple of recordings that took me 3 hours to do one 30-minute, 30-second commercial, realizing, whoa, there's a big disconnect of how we feel we come across versus what reality states. My path followed that, worked for a lot of corporations, but always in the lane of how do we show up? How do we communicate in a way that we build a personal brand that truly not only has influence, but it's just one that you're proud of Monday to Monday. Fast forward 20 years later, which is we just celebrated our 20th anniversary this year of the company.
Congratulations.
That's our lane, as you know. It's really helping increase leaders, sales professionals, anyone that is really in that profit center of a company, helping them increase their awareness of how much influence they really have rather than what they believe to be true. And then from there, give them like practical how-tos of how they can grow this in today's age of communication, no matter what medium they're trying to influence through.
Yeah, because communication has become a lot more complicated since there's so many more mediums to communicate with.
Yeah. And I think people don't realize like it's such and you and I, we've talked about this before. Communication just seems like it's very fluffy. Well, we do it every day. We should know how to do it. But when you think about a leader and the work that you do with the strategic planning, if communication is not effective in a leader, I don't care how smart you are or how long you've been in that role, right? It is the core to everything that we do. And I don't think everyone realizes that.
I don't think so either. Because in my career, I have definitely seen less than talented people really sail in their careers because they're amazing communicators, and then some brilliant individuals that can't get anywhere because they're missing that core ingredient. But I'm curious too. I want to ask you a question that may seem like a stupid question, but I think it's a really good place to start. How do you define communication?
Yeah, that is a great place to start because I think there's a big misperception that my title, if I feel comfortable, if I know my message, if I'm feeling comfortable with who I'm speaking to, I'm good. And I'm here to say that all of that is such a false belief because we go off of how we feel. Influence really is that your body language and your messaging, that they're consistent, they're congruent Monday to Monday. I'm talking about hanging out with friends, family, coworkers, virtually, hybrid, and anything else in between that people always know what they're going to expect. The more consistent you are, the less you have doubt of everyone else that's interacting with you. So that's one side of it. The other side, influence doesn't happen in one interaction. Sometimes it's more about how can you influence someone to take action long after that initial interaction takes place.
So let's dive into that because God, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So for the average person, the average leader, let's say, or the average salesperson, I love that you focused in on the fact that you work with people in the profit area of the company because that's where communication is important. Talk about communication impact and how many people, like when you start with a leader, how mismatched are we? How incongruent are we? And is it a matter of learning a process to communicate effectively? What does it take to get that self awareness around how you're communicating and how you're coming off?
Okay. I think there's layers to it because there is a lot there. So I want to make this really simple for your followers to be able to apply, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think first, it has to be feedback because that's going to be the self-discovery stage. You just have to discover, well, how do I really come across verbally and non-verbally versus what I believe people do? And then that discovery phase leads you to self-awareness. Then you have to commit to the level of consistency you want based on what you're training on. And then it's accountability. So I'm gonna take it. I'm sure all of your followers know that you play golf, and
Yes.
I use analogies a lot. And anytime someone comes to us for either mentoring or workshops, whatever it might be, I always say to them, it's very similar to if you've been playing golf, tennis for a long time. And our first meeting is all I'm going to say to you is swing the club. I need to get a baseline. You need a baseline to figure out where are you verbally and non-verbally. That's the first thing. And how do we do that? We do tons of this. We record people over and over and over so they can experience it. From there, we watch the playback, Meridith, and we say, okay, I want you to watch it. I want you to feel it. I want you to relate to how you felt on that first swing versus what everyone else is seeing. From there, we start building it. So it really is rebuilding, taking a step back on what is working with your golf game, what's not, and then rebuilding it based on our client's style, the people, the type of interactions they have. And number three, what's the outcome? What are they willing to commit to and do the work around? Where do they want to be in the next 30 days? And anyone listening to this, you can easily record yourself day in and day out. You do it on your phone. You have all you know is I could be recording myself right now on my phone.
Right.
And getting the feedback, but the feedback is not the sugarcoating, people tell you how great you are. It's what do you do? What do you say? How do you show up? How do you stay showed up where it's working or it's not working? So it's some real hardcore conversations and self-evaluation, Meridith, that a lot of people don't want to take the step because the minute our body goes to an uncomfortable spot, it tells us you're wrong. This is incorrect. This is not how you should communicate.
You know, I always say that I think the best communicator out there is the GPS system on your phone, and the reason is because she never yells at you. She never assumes you're wrong. She recalculates. I mean, all she's trying to do is to be heard. But you know, that leads to, I mean, for those listening to this and those listening to this in the future, taking that feedback the first time is hard. I mean, you have a natural defensive mode. And let's face it, with communication, my intention wasn't to communicate ineffectively. I'm just doing what I'm comfortable with.
Right.
So how do you get your mindset ready? Because I think, it reminds me of when I do 360s with people. And I always say the first one's the hardest. After you can get over the hump of the first one, you're kind of excited to get the negative feedback because now you got something to work with. But that mindset to that first one is difficult. How does somebody get ready for that?
Yeah. So to two simple steps, always prepare for the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to get feedback from you prior to us doing this live, I quickly would have said to you, all right, here's what I'm working on. Would you listen for that? Or would you watch for this? Or here's how I want to come across. Would you watch what I do or say where that's not happening? Always prepare for the feedback. Because otherwise, if we get done with this conversation, Meridith, and I ask you, how did I do?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I don't know. I guess it was good. I don't give you any direction. So that's the first thing. And like you said, this is all momentum and repetition. Anytime you're messing with the muscle memory, the more you ask for the feedback, I don't want to say anything gets easy when it comes to our communication and developing that. The more you're willing to commit to it, the more open you are to it. And here's the deal. You don't have to take and act on all the feedback you get.
Yeah.
You still get to decide what you want to do. The key though is get rid of that good, nice job. It gets you nowhere. You need to take responsibility for how do you want that feedback to land? What specifically do you want them to look for? And repetition, repetition, repetition.
So, how important is communication? I mean, I think another thing that's really interesting, we were sitting here at Halloween talking about this, but what's right around the corner are the elections. And I think,
Right.
and I think, I mean, I'm not going down the path of either side or anything, but communication always fascinates me when it comes to, because the person who can keep it simple, the person who can connect and relate, the person who has the empathy, who understands the pain point, that is the person and then one who is just completely disconnected, may be the better person for the job, but they're just missing. So, I'm so interested, let's assume I go into a company, and I can't tell you how often, I mean, the work that I do is not going to land if the leader can't communicate and effect and connect. It's a
True.
waste of time and energy. So how do you kind of phrase that? How do you get people to understand the importance of something that a lot of people put off there as a soft skill, as fluff?
So several layers there. The list is long. If you think of why is communication important, think about in your personal life and your professional life, how many times this very moment where we sit, you've already talked today, you've already communicated. Communication to me, when it comes to a leader, determines the businesses that you run. It determines the people that follow you. It determines the results you're getting, the amount of time you have or don't have in a day. Are you wasting time because you're too long-winded? It communicates profits. What kind of profits are rolling in? Because if people cannot follow your message every step of the way, how is your sales team going to sell to increase profits if they can't follow your direction? Then you think about in your personal life. And I go down this road so many times with people with children, which is
Yeah.
also why I tell Meridith, I share with them, this is why I don't speak to high schools. It's not my area of expertise by any means. But I hear the parents that I teach, how they struggle with their communication and getting it through to their kids. So it impacts your personal life as well. How do people get, I'm going to try to think back what you had just asked. How do you go there? Like, how do you realize that power of the communication? I go back to where we started earlier. I really think the only way you can understand the level of communication, the impact you have or don't have, you've got to see yourself, hear yourself through the eyes and ears of your listeners. If there is one action step, everyone who's listening to this walks away with right now, record yourself on your phone and do it consistently. Because the more I find, even in myself, the more I record just random conversations throughout the day, more formal presentations I deliver, I'm so much more aware right now having a conversation with you, thinking about my brevity, thinking about my body language and how it comes across.
Mm-hmm.
Without seeing myself on a video, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. How do people, though, I always think of communication as we're trying so hard to get the words out and to get people to take action. But if people don't hear you, you're not communicating, right? I mean, if they're not moving, if they're not buying in, they're not, do you have to be able to communicate in different ways depending on who you're talking to? And how do you know if those types of things are landing? How do you read it?
Yeah. So let's do three. Let's give them 3 steps that they can easily use. Not easily, that they can use. The first is brevity. Start thinking and speaking in bullet point sentences. Honor the silence to let your listeners stay with you and for you to be constantly translating and thinking on the fly. Since so many of our conversations are impromptu. Similar, this is all impromptu right now, right? Second, it sounds so simple. I do not refer to eye contact as eye contact. I think it's so much greater than that. And it's connecting. It's eye connection. It's only speaking when you see the camera or you see a pair of eyes when you're in person. Because if you cannot connect on purpose, you're missing the nonverbal cues that your listeners might be telling you, you just went over my head. Or, okay, move on, I'm getting bored. The third is interact, interact, interact. And I don't mean, do you have any questions? How are you today? Like all this closed-ended conversation. It's more about what concerns do you have about the strategy I just laid out? Then you learn to outpause everyone on that call or in that room, because that feedback, if we don't ask the right open-ended questions, we don't know, did our message land? Or are they concerned that they can even take this action, but they're not going to say anything? I don't see the level of interaction I'd love to see with some of the meetings that I sit in and observe. It's more, come on a Zoom call. I've got to get off in 30 minutes because I'm already thinking about my next Zoom call and the one after that. It's this check the box that has really become people's habit ever since we went virtual. We're losing this communicating with empathy. And I think those three, the brevity, the building trust with our eyes, and increasing the interaction, that violates empathy if we're not covering all three consistently.
Yeah, one thing I love about what you're saying, and one reason I really wanted to talk about communication around uncertainty, is that when people feel uncertain, the one thing they feel is out of control. I mean, that's the thing they want, is the one thing they can't have, and that's to be back into control. And leaders come in and communicate in a very dictatorial way because leaders are afraid of losing profits, of losing customers, of somebody making a mistake. And it's this disconnect that, in all honesty, if you would engage, if you would ask, if you would give people, when you ask people questions and they get to share their ideas, it's a level of control for them. It's not perfection, but at least if you say to me, what do you think, Meridith? I feel like I have a little bit of say in what's going on in my life and my business. And I think the moment, like I look at 2023 and I think interest rates, I think, stock market, I think I just heard this morning that the supply chain is probably going to get hit again. And what I see is leaders pull back rather than go in with people. And you're going to get the opposite effect, I think.
Oh, there's so much there. And it's another reason why communication is so critical. It's a global skill.
Right.
Everyone does it. It's recognizing those that are always self-aware Monday to Monday of truly how they come across that can make those changes. I think too, those that are confident to step in with both feet to say, all right, this requires me to actually think through my message. Mm-hmm. Because when I bring up pausing, this whole idea of brevity, it's with all these challenges going on, and remembering that when you talk to, say it's a client today at 2:00, you have no idea how many messages they've already received, right? So that makes influence that much more difficult. To break through that noise, you have to be memorable for the right reasons. A big piece of communicating with empathy is really taking that brevity, time to be thinking on your feet, to consistently be adapting your message. Stay in the lane your client is in. And if we get too caught up in our own agenda, what we want to accomplish, and pay attention, goes back to the eye connection. When you're on these Zoom calls and you see individuals,
yes,
this is so much more interesting, or they're talking to someone outside their window, whatever it might be happening, that's feedback. Mm-hmm. It's another way to get feedback, to say, okay, start interacting with these folks and figure out, where do you need to change your message so you can bring them all back?
Yeah, I think that is so true. Being able to pay attention so that you are adjusting that message in the fly, that people, because you sort of have this whole piece prepared, right? And you're like, well, I have to put this story in. But if you can feel the audience is losing you, you're losing them, you need to be able to adjust it. I had a friend of ours, Linda Larson in National Speakers Association, looked at a keynote that I did. I always send my videos out and I'll just say, give me some feedback on this. What do you think? And I had a couple of really funny lines in it. And she said, Meridith, the audience wanted to laugh with you. Like, I delivered the line and I moved on to the next line. And she said, you didn't give them a time to play with you. You didn't give them a time to engage. And that had such a powerful impact on me, because whether I'm talking in a serious way, whether I'm coaching a client, whether I'm on a sales call, people want their turn, right? And if you pass over it, it's a way of dismissing them, that we're just trying to rush through a script.
Yeah. I don't think I shared this with you. I hired a humorist to coach me earlier this year. Not a speaker that talks on humor. Literally, I was on a mission to find a comedian who does it for a living. And I'm going to give him a plug. His Mike is Mike Goodwin.
Okay.
He's been on America's Got Talent. He was like on one of the top shows, right? So crazy funny. But when I hired him and he was coaching me on the same thing, he said, I watch your videos, Stacey, and you don't even let people laugh at you. I said to him, well, sometimes I'm uncomfortable because I'm not sure if it's funny enough. I think it's funny, but I don't know if they know it's funny. He said, well, as a professional comedian, we have a term for it. We call it pause for a cause. A comedian does not honor that silence right after the punchline to let everyone laugh. They refer to that as a comedian is stepping on their own laughter.
Wow. I
took that and I said, oh, so that's what my clients are doing when they do not honor that silence. They're stepping on their own ideas. They're stepping on their clients' thoughts.
Yeah. And if people can't engage, I want to ask you, because I watched a video on your site. I love the fact that you had this question on there, and it was, what is speaking with influence? And so for the audience, what does that mean? What is it? Why is it important? And what are you trying to accomplish with that?
Trying to accomplish giving people how-tos to make sure that every time you put a meeting together, you have a hallway conversation. If you're back at your offices at any point, there's always action taken, because you've got to think about every conversation you have is an invitation for the next conversation. But that won't happen if there's not action there. Correct? Mm-hmm. Now, Meridith, I forgot. What was the first part?
Well, what was the first question? What exactly is speaking with influence? Yeah.
It's as basic as I see your name on my calendar, my Outlook calendar in the morning as I'm scanning my day. And I look at that and I think, oh, this is going to be worth my time.
Nice.
I will not be distracted. I won't check email. There'll be no time with that. And she'll make it worth my time because she's going to interact with me. So I have to come committed and ready to engage, but there's going to be action there. To me, that's influence. When you can create this reputation that you're trustworthy, you're confident, you always get to the point, you make it worth my time. I trust you that even if I don't agree with you, I'm willing to listen to get to a point of an understanding, even if it's a disagreement. All of that to me is if you're really, truly speaking with influence. But that has to be consistent. You can't turn this stuff on and turn it off. It doesn't work.
Yeah. One. I always close with two questions, which I'm going to get to in a second, but I have one other because I'm curious about this. One thing that is making me a little crazy with communication lately is responsiveness. And where does responsiveness play in the communication of a leader? And what I mean by responsiveness is I not only mean, you respond to an email, you respond to a cell phone, but you move meetings a lot. You shift things, around. I mean, does that fall into the realm of communication, and where does that play?
I do. You and I are in the same boat. We were just having this conversation with my team the other day that the lack of responsiveness, I would say in the last 6 months, is really pretty unreal. Mm-hmm. To me, it's influence has the greatest impact when you don't know you're doing it. This silent where I'm not talking to my clients, but they won't respond to the email, yet it was their initial call out. It was their initial invitation to schedule a call. And then it goes crickets, right? There's nothing. Or like you said, the constant lack of follow through. We've got a call at 10 a.m. and at 9:58, they cancel the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I have this spot for you along with other people that are waiting to get on my calendar. Mm-hmm. I think that's even a whole nother level of diminishing your influence through your nonverbal behavior. Yeah. It's when you're on this call. Let's say we're on a meeting with several other leaders, and you can see some leaders are totally distracted. They're constantly turning their camera on and off. Oh, yeah. It's like you have influence. You're always under surveillance. And especially the level that you have in an organization, the higher you go, I think that camera is even bigger in the eyes of everyone else. You're right, because they're looking at you as the VP of sales. How did you get that spot? Mm-hmm. And if that's something I want, then I'm going to watch your behaviors. Most importantly, I'm going to watch if they are consistent. You can tell I'm a little passionate about this.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I think in today's world, like I always tell my clients, I'll say, you need to understand you need amazing employees more than they need you.
True.
And if you have an unbelievable opportunity here. And if you can put an amazing leader in there who can really connect, who can really communicate. One of the things that makes me crazy is moving coaching sessions on team members. When I have a leader whose responsibility is to coach one-on-one, just like the signal that you are sending is that that person is not important. And a
So
lot of
true.
times employees just go, well, it doesn't really matter. I didn't need the time anyway. It doesn't matter. It's subliminal in there that you're telling somebody time with you is not valuable versus the opposite. If you prioritize it, you let people know that they're the most valued part of your company.
Well, see, that's an important point because I have a friend,
Mhm.
same thing, is constantly, she'll share with me how we were supposed to do the coaching session. This has been already rescheduled 3 times, my review.
Mhm.
And she said, it's just, that's how it is. I go, what do you mean that's how it is? She
Yeah.
said, well, it's always been that way. Now her boss has created this reputation talking about consistency. And I get things come up in life, and it's happened to me where I've had to cancel something. But I'll tell you what, Meredith, I am apologizing. I'm acknowledging what happened, and I'm also communicating to them why it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's even the acknowledge the fact that I received your email. I don't have time to do the research now. I have to find out, but I can get back to you by the end of the week. Like,
so true. Just
it's
let me know it came
1
through.
minute.
Yeah.
Just let me know you received the message.
Yeah.
And it's all these things, Meredith. I think that your clients and my clients, the more that they do these steps, this is not rocket science.
Right.
This is not something that's complicated. The more you will stand out.
I
really believe that, right?
Yeah, it's so powerful. All right. So last question. One, we want you to tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, find out more about your programs, about your book. I mean, all those great things. And then what's your one piece of advice? I mean, here we are again. We're in fourth quarter of 2022. Definitely lots of opportunity ahead, but lots of challenging times. What is your biggest piece of advice for our entrepreneurs, CEOs, and leaders that want to thrive in uncertainty?
No matter how uncertain the world is, whether that's your personal life or your professional life, there is one thing we have control over, and that's our personal and professional development. Doesn't matter if we are in recession, supply chain is tough. That won't affect your development. You've got control of that. So if there's one thing to do today, it's start recording. Just get some recordings, take a look. That would be hands down a small step with probably the greatest impact you'll have on your self-development.
All right. Tell our audience where to get a hold of you to learn. Because I tell you, I just think communication, if you fix communication, so much else is going to take care of itself. I would rather have a leader that was an effective communicator than one who was highly skilled in sales, highly skilled in, performance reviews or financial proficiency. If you can communicate, you can build a business and lead a team.
So true. So true. You and I can solve a lot of the world problems. We're big in social media, especially LinkedIn. If they can, they see my name on the screen, just go on social media and Google me. We are constantly.
See her posts on LinkedIn. They're awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. You back at you, yours as well. And you and I both are big with providing value adds. Their videos. The video topics are always based on what my clients are telling me they want me to talk about. So it's real time, practical stuff. And then if you want to take a deeper dive and get some resources off of our website, again, just use my name. It's StaceyHankeinc.com.
All right. Thank you again for joining us. I loved this conversation. We will put all of that information and more in the show notes. And thank you to our audience for joining us for another episode of Thrive, Turning Uncertainty into Competitive Advantage, the show where you're going to get all the information you need to make this uncertainty your greatest competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Meredith.